It was a late summer evening when Tom decided to take the road trip he'd always talked about. He had been stressed from work and personal life, so he threw a few things in a backpack, hopped in his old beat-up car, and hit the open highway. As the sun set behind him, a vast stretch of empty road stretched before him. Tom felt free, liberated even. Hours passed, and the roads became darker, lonelier. The only lights were from his headlights cutting through the fog that began to creep in. The GPS had stopped working about an hour ago, but Tom wasn't worried. He liked the idea of being off the grid for a while. But as the night grew deeper, his car began to sputter and slow. He cursed under his breath, pulling over to the side of the deserted highway. The engine died completely. Tom popped the hood and poked around, but he wasn't much of a mechanic. Just his luck, he was stranded in the middle of nowhere, with no cell signal and no clue where the nearest town was. He sat back in the driver's seat, contemplating whether to sleep in the car and wait until morning. Just as he was about to close his eyes, a set of headlights appeared in the distance. Tom felt a sense of relief wash over him as the car approached and slowed to a stop beside him. It was an old pickup truck, the kind you'd expect to see in horror movies, but Tom was desperate. The passenger window rolled down, and an older man in a plaid shirt and baseball cap leaned out. "Need a ride?" he asked in a gravelly voice. Tom hesitated for a moment but figured he had no other option. He grabbed his backpack and hopped into the passenger seat. The man didn't say much, just nodded and started driving. The radio was on, playing some old country tune that only added to the eerie quiet between them. After a few minutes, Tom tried to make small talk. "Where are you headed?" Tom asked. The man glanced at him, his eyes hidden beneath the shadow of his cap. "Just passing through," he muttered. Tom noticed something off about the man. His hands were rough, like they'd been working in dirt or something worse. The inside of the truck smelled like mildew, and something metallic lingered in the air. He couldn't place it, but it made him uncomfortable. Still, Tom stayed quiet. Beggars couldn't be choosers. They drove for what felt like hours, though Tom had no idea where they were headed. The man had taken some turns off the main highway, and now they were on a narrow, winding road that seemed to lead deeper into the woods. Anxiety began to gnaw at Tom. He noticed something in the rearview mirror, a shape in the back of the truck. It was covered by a tarp, but it was big, too big for just luggage or gear. His heartbeat quickened. He looked over at the man, whose eyes were focused straight ahead, his expression unreadable. Tom tried to shake the growing fear, but something about the whole situation felt wrong. The man's silence, the smell, the tarp-covered mystery in the back, it all started to add up to something dark. He glanced at the door handle, considering making a run for it, but the truck was moving too fast, and he had no idea where they even were. Suddenly, the man spoke, his voice cold and detached. "You ever pick up a hitchhiker?" Tom blinked, caught off guard. No, can't say I have. Not really my thing." The man nodded slowly, his hands gripping the wheel tighter. "It's risky business, picking up strangers. You never know who you're letting into your car." Tom's throat tightened. Was this a warning? He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, trying to appear calm. "Yeah, I guess you're right." The man turned his head slightly, his eyes now visible under the brim of his cap. They were dark, almost black, and void of any warmth. "You never know what kind of people are out here. Could be killers, could be worse." Tom's heart pounded in his chest. The air inside the truck felt stifling. He glanced at the door again, his fingers inching toward the handle. The man smiled, but there was no kindness in it, only malice. "Ever wonder why people disappear on these roads?" Tom's blood ran cold. He could feel the tension in the air thickening, his instincts screaming at him to get out. Without warning, the man veered off the road, driving into a dense forest area. Tom's hand gripped the door handle, and just as the truck slowed to a crawl, he yanked the door open and jumped out, rolling onto the ground. Pain shot through his body as he scrambled to his feet, hearing the truck's tires skidding to a stop behind him. He ran. The sound of the truck door slamming shut echoed through the night. Footsteps pounded after him, fast and heavy. Tom didn't dare look back. He sprinted through the trees, his lungs burning, the darkness swallowing him whole. Branches scratched at his face, his legs ached, but he couldn't stop. The footsteps were getting closer. Panic surged through him. He stumbled over a root, hitting the ground hard. Pain shot up his leg, but he forced himself up, limping now. Then, the footsteps stopped. Tom hid behind a large tree, gasping for air, trying to quiet his racing heart. He listened, straining to hear any movement, but there was nothing. Only the sound of the wind rustling through the leaves. Slowly, he peeked around the tree. The man was gone. The forest was empty. Tom didn't wait to find out where he went. He limped in the opposite direction, hoping to find a road, a house, anything. But as he moved through the trees, a sinking feeling settled in his gut. He was lost. Completely and utterly lost. And somewhere out there, the man was still hunting him. It had been a long day for Amy. The drive back from her college town to visit her parents for the weekend had taken longer than expected. Night had fallen, and she was still miles away from home. The rural roads stretched endlessly in front of her, flanked by dense forests on either side. Her car's gas gauge hovered dangerously close to empty, and Amy cursed herself for not filling up at the last town. She kept her eyes peeled for any sign of a gas station or diner, but all she saw were shadows stretching across the road from the towering trees. As she rounded a bend, she spotted a figure standing on the side of the road. It was a man, tall and lanky, with his thumb out, hitchhiking. Amy's first instinct was to drive past, but as she got closer, she saw the look on his face. He looked desperate, almost terrified. She hesitated, her foot hovering over the brake. Hitchhiking was risky, she knew that. But the man didn't look like a threat. In fact, he looked more like someone who was in trouble. Against her better judgment, she slowed down and pulled over. The man jogged up to her car, his eyes wide with relief. "Thank you so much for stopping," he said, his voice shaky. "I didn't think anyone would." Amy forced a smile, her heart pounding in her chest. "No problem. Where are you headed?" "Just up the road," he said, his eyes darting nervously to the woods. "My car broke down, and I've been walking for hours." Amy nodded, trying to calm her nerves. "Hop in." The man slid into the passenger seat, and Amy pulled back onto the road. The silence between them was thick and uncomfortable. Amy kept glancing at him out of the corner of her eye. He looked normal enough, but something about him seemed off. His clothes were torn, and there was dirt smudged on his face. His hands shook slightly as he fidgeted with the zipper on his jacket. "Are you okay?" Amy asked, breaking the silence. The man's head snapped towards her, his eyes wide with fear. "We have to keep driving. Don't stop, no matter what." Amy's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "What do you mean?" He leaned closer, his voice a harsh whisper. "There's something out there, in the woods. It's been following me. I don't know what it is, but it's been stalking me for hours. Please, just keep driving." A chill ran down Amy's spine. She wanted to laugh it off, tell him he was imagining things, but the fear in his voice was real. She pressed harder on the gas, her heart racing. They drove in silence for a few more minutes, the tension in the car palpable. Amy kept her eyes on the road, but her mind was racing. What had she gotten herself into? Suddenly, the man grabbed her arm, his eyes wide with terror. "There. Do you see it?" Amy jerked her head to the side, and her blood ran cold. In the trees, barely visible in the darkness, was a shadowy figure. It was tall and thin, with glowing red eyes that seemed to pierce through the night. It moved quickly, darting between the trees, keeping pace with the car. Amy's heart pounded in her chest as she floored the gas pedal, the car speeding down the road. The figure in the woods didn't slow down. It was as if it was toying with them, staying just out of sight but close enough to be seen. "What the hell is that?" Amy whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," the man said, his voice barely audible. "But it's been following me since my car broke down. I don't know how to stop it." Amy's hands were shaking as she gripped the steering wheel, her eyes darting between the road and the trees. The figure was still there, still watching, still following. "We have to get to a town," the man said, his voice rising in panic. "We have to get out of these woods." Amy nodded, her mind racing. She didn't know how much farther it was to the next town, and with her gas gauge almost empty, she wasn't sure they'd make it. Suddenly, the car lurched, and Amy screamed as the engine sputtered and died. They coasted to a stop on the side of the road, the silence deafening. "Oh no," the man whispered, his eyes wide with terror. "Oh no, no, no." Amy frantically tried to restart the car, but the engine wouldn't turn over. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the keys. "It's coming," the man whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's coming." Amy looked up, and her blood ran cold. The figure was standing at the edge of the trees, its glowing red eyes locked on them. It was closer now, its tall, thin body looming over them like a nightmare come to life. "We have to go," the man said, his voice trembling. "We have to run." But Amy couldn't move. She was frozen in place, her mind unable to process what was happening. The figure stepped out of the trees, moving slowly towards them, its eyes glowing brighter with each step. The man grabbed her arm, pulling her out of the car. "We have to run," he screamed, but Amy was still frozen, her mind overwhelmed with fear. The figure was almost upon them now, its red eyes glowing like burning embers. It reached out a long, thin arm, its fingers curling like claws. In that moment, Amy knew there was no escaping it. The rain was coming down in sheets, hammering against the windshield as Ben drove through the desolate country road. The storm had rolled in quickly, turning what was supposed to be a simple trip into a nerve-wracking journey. His knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel, squinting through the torrential downpour. The clock on the dashboard blinked 11:45 p.m. It was late, and the last thing he wanted was to be driving through the middle of nowhere in this weather. But his GPS had taken him on a detour, and now he was completely lost, miles away from the main highway. As he rounded a bend, his headlights caught sight of something up ahead, a figure standing by the side of the road, drenched in the rain, their thumb out in the universal hitchhiking gesture. Ben hesitated. Picking up hitchhikers wasn't something he would normally do, especially not in a storm like this. But the figure looked desperate, hunched over, soaked to the bone. Against his better judgment, he slowed down and pulled over. The passenger door opened, and the figure climbed in without a word, water dripping from their clothes. Ben glanced over, trying to make out their features through the dim light. It was a woman, her long hair plastered to her face, her eyes wide and hollow. "Thanks," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the rain. "No problem," Ben muttered, pulling back onto the road. "Where are you headed?" The woman didn't answer right away. She was shivering, her hands clutching the edges of her soaked coat. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "Just up the road, wherever you're going." Ben frowned but didn't press her. The storm was making it hard enough to focus on driving. The last thing he needed was to get into a conversation with a complete stranger. They drove in silence for a while, the only sound the relentless pounding of the rain and the occasional rumble of thunder. The windshield wipers struggled to keep up with the deluge, and Ben found himself leaning forward, squinting to see the road. "Are you okay?" Ben asked, glancing over at her. The woman was staring straight ahead, her face pale, her eyes fixed on something in the distance. "I'm fine," she whispered, but her voice trembled. Something about her demeanor put Ben on edge. There was a strange tension in the air, an unease that seemed to grow with every passing mile. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "Where were you before I picked you up?" he asked, trying to make small talk. The woman didn't answer at first, just kept staring ahead. Then, in a voice so quiet he almost didn't hear it, she said, "Running." Ben's grip tightened on the wheel. "Running from what?" She turned to look at him, her eyes wide and terrified. "It's following me." Ben's heart skipped a beat. "What's following you?" Before she could answer, the car jolted as if it had hit something. Ben slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a stop. His heart raced as he stared out into the rain, but there was nothing there. "What the hell?" he muttered, his hands shaking as he gripped the wheel. The woman beside him let out a sob. "It's here." Ben turned to her, his heart pounding in his chest. "What are you talking about?" "There's nothing." Suddenly, the car was hit with a force so strong it nearly flipped. Ben screamed as the car was shoved off the road, crashing into the trees. The sound of metal crunching and glass shattering filled his ears. When the car finally stopped, Ben's vision blurred, his head spinning. Blood trickled down his forehead, and he groaned in pain. He turned to look at the woman, but she was gone. The passenger seat was empty, the door hanging open. Ben stumbled out of the wrecked car, the rain still pouring down in torrents. His head throbbed, and he could barely see through the darkness and the storm. "Hello?" he called out, his voice shaky. "Where are you?" There was no response, only the sound of the rain and the distant rumble of thunder. Ben's heart raced as he scanned the area. The woman had vanished, but something else was out there. He could feel it, an overwhelming sense of dread washed over him, and he knew he wasn't alone. Suddenly, a flash of lightning illuminated the road, and Ben saw it, a figure standing in the distance, tall and menacing. It was the same shape he had seen in the rearview mirror, the same dark presence that had followed them. The figure moved closer, slowly, deliberately, as if it had all the time in the world. Panic surged through Ben's veins, and he turned to run, but his legs wouldn't move. It was as if the air had turned to cement, trapping him in place. The figure grew closer, and Ben's vision blurred again. His chest tightened, and his breath came in short, ragged gasps. Then, everything went black. When Ben woke up, the storm had passed. The sun was rising, casting an eerie light over the wrecked car. He was lying on the side of the road, his clothes soaked, his head throbbing with pain. The woman was gone, and so was the figure. Ben sat up, his mind racing. He didn't know what had happened, but one thing was clear, he would never pick up a hitchhiker again. Love these stories? YouTube algorithm suggests that you would like to listen to these stories. Click on the video on the screen.